Before we get to some of the downside stuff about your dad, he was, no denying, a passionate man. We have a scene from The Ten Commandments, the film you mentioned, the Cecil B. DeMille epic, in which your dad and Anne Baxter are going at it. Let's take a look.
I know you, my sweet. You're a sharp-clawed, treacherous little peacock. But you're food for the gods. And I'm going to have all of you.
Whoa. All right, he said, I know you, my sweet. Did we know him, your father?
No, he kept his life, his entire background, a great secret.
Were your grandparents indeed Mongolian gypsies, or whatever story he told?
Well, what he discovered early on was that even if he told the story exactly right, the press wasn't going to reprint it exactly right. So early on, he started inventing one variation after another. Sometimes he had gypsy parents, sometimes he was born on Sakhalin, sometimes he was born in China. And sometimes he'd simply offer a menu of possibilities to the journalist, even for a Newsweek cover story, where he invented a complete fiction that his mother was a gypsy woman and that his father was this and that. When his sister Vera was asked whether this was true, she was unable to go along with him on this. She couldn't help but tell the true story. And that made him so angry with her that he didn't speak to her again till her death, some 10 years later.
Oh, how sad. Well, what's the true story? Where did he come from?
He was born, strangely enough, this exotic character was born of Swiss descent. His grandfather was a Swiss fellow who went to the Far East, started a trading company, married a Mongolian woman, and their son married a Russian woman. So Yul was half Russian, quarter Mongolian, and quarter Swiss.
Where did he get the idea to shave his head?
During The King and I, when he first did The King and I in 1951, the costume designer, the famous Irene Sheriff, recommended that since the actual king had shaved his head in a Buddhist monastery, that he might want to do that.
We mentioned that he was married 4 times. His affairs with Marilyn Monroe, for example.
Yul had an affair with Marilyn in the mid-50s that he kept very secret from everyone except myself, his only son.
Ingrid Bergman.
Ingrid Bergman, he had a brief and very loving relationship with. Well, they made the film Anastasia.
Mommy dearest herself, Joan Crawford.
Joan Crawford, Yul visited one night, very late in 1947, and had a very unpleasant half hour that really, in which Miss Crawford simply expected to be serviced.
What about Judy Garland?
Judy was someone Yul was very much in love with, and while their affair was very brief, their affection for each other went on really till the end of each of their lives.
Did you try to follow in your dad's footsteps, become a producer?
In many respects, Yul was the sort of man who saw his only son as the extension of his own soul into the next generation. And yet there were limits that I could not cross. I could not be like him in many respects. This was a man who, when he had sudden appendicitis, asked to be given a spinal anesthetic so that he'd remain conscious during the operation, and he set up a mirror so that he could photograph his own appendectomy. Just out of curiosity and this detachment that he had from his own body and from pain, this was a tough act to follow.
I bet.
Yeah.
And you know, in that picture we saw of you and your dad, and in almost every picture we looked at in the files, he has a cigarette in his mouth.
Yes.
Is that what killed him?
Yes, absolutely. He not only was an avid smoker, but he incorporated it in his public image throughout his career, his stage and film career. Whenever he saw a still camera, basically, he lit a cigarette.
I remember his last performance. It was a public service announcement released posthumously. Why don't we play it and then go to commercial? Let's watch Yul Brynner's last performance.
Ladies and gentlemen, the late Yul Brynner.
I really wanted to make a commercial when I discovered that I was that sick and my time was so limited. I wanted to make that commercial that says simply, now that I'm gone, I tell you, don't smoke.